about spaceships. It's not about spaceships. It's not about spaceships. It's not about spaceships.
Hey everyone, I'm Jason Ward, and you're watching the Making Star Wars Show. If you're a Patreon subscriber, you might be listening to the Making Star Wars Show. And today I got my buddy Rob back because he is a cool guy to hang out with.
And I got my 1986 Star Tours mug. I'm just hanging out here in Star Tours. You know, everyone wants to see Galaxy's Edge, but there's always room at Star Tours. I guarantee it.
And Mr. Santa says, Happy Monday. Happy Monday, Mr. Santa. Make sure you guys check out his show. Love it. I had him on last week. It was a really fun time. So check that out if you haven't yet, too.
And just to tag on that show, I will be watching Paper Moon sometime this week. So
yeah, me too. Me too. I actually wanted to watch Paper Moon, and the kids were with me, and they were like, "We're not watching Paper Moon." I was like,
sounds like an episode of the Clone Wars or Bad Batch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just the name of it, like
Paper
Moon.
It has that kind of jam vibe to it. It sounds like it has that very Japanese feeling that Star Wars likes to riff on too. I don't know anything about the movie. Is it a Japanese movie?
No, I've never even heard of it. Okay. So I'm familiar with the Akira Kurosawa films and Orson Welles movies, and that's about it. Around that era, you know.
And that's what's funny is I am to some extent too. Like, and I know my Rashomon and my Seven Samurai and stuff like that. And
straight on,
you will always hear like homeboy Zack Snyder wanted to make a Star Wars based movie based off of Seven Samurai, and I guess that's being turned into a different film now. And everyone
Rebel Moon?
Yeah, maybe it's Paper Moon and Seven Samurai put together.
Yeah,
but I'm a little bit like, I like it when they riff on Kurosawa. I like it when they try to pull on those threads for their own content. But it's like when I watch Magnificent Seven, which is just a remake of it, it's like, so what? It's just not as good to me. It just loses a lot of its luster personally. And same thing with like the A-Team. The A-Team is so far removed from it that it has that same, because the A-Team is a remake of Seven Samurai, or the format is the Seven Samurai format. And it's like, it works there because it's so far removed. And so that's why I was never super down with the Snyder idea of, I'm just going to remake Seven Samurai with Star Wars. Because it won't
be again, I mean, like A Bug's Life as well, right? So, and that's, I mean, that's pretty removed. Like when you really get, I mean, and Three Amigos, which is probably my favorite of all the remakes when you think about it.
Yeah.
Great. Right. Yeah. But I mean, I think with the Zack Snyder thing, like that was just an interesting time where him and JJ were doing that tag on social media where like Zack Snyder would take photos of like the stormtroopers being arrested in Gotham when they were shooting Batman v Superman. Yeah. And then JJ did that one where like he zoomed in on the Millennium Falcon and like there was like the tumbler. I guess it was the tumbler was like glued to the side of the Falcon.
Right.
When they were shooting. Yeah. And so that was like I'd never seen anything like that before, whatever that was. So it was an odd time.
Professional film nerds one-upping each other in nice but friendly ways kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like the Branson Elon Musk thing, but I guess these guys pay taxes. So.
Maybe.
Not anymore, certainly. Not where you... Yeah, I know, right? With those rebates, it probably all washes out.
Yeah. What do you call it? Really quickly. Star Wars Santa says it's not Japanese. It's a throwback to Prussian era. Oh, okay, cool. Mark Hamilton says, Jason, you listened to the last Bob podcast? He strongly hints that Yoda will be an acolyte. Yeah, and not to like step on his report. I haven't heard the show yet. I'm behind. But back, if you recall, I did in an article about the High Republic era and how they wanted to make movies with the High Republic. That's where they wanted it to go. And one of the main reasons is that they can use Yoda a little more removed from the prequel era, where they could essentially tell Yoda stories. And it was, my belief is it was branching off of the Yoda concept for a Yoda concept film. And I don't think it was going to straight up be a Yoda film, judging by how they, and this is conjecture now based off of the fact that they wanted to not make Yoda that different from what I understand in the end. Like some of the earlier Yoda ideas was a much different Yoda. In fact, there's this really great piece of concept art. I think I have it on me because I'm weird. I think I might have it on my phone. And it was from the prequel era, but it was like, what would younger Yoda look like?
Is it the Ian McKegg stuff?
Yeah, let me see if I can get it onto the
right. Yeah. That's
so,
like
that's
it's like the teenage Grogu, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
But I believe that the whole entire side of that, or the whole like bait, if you will, for the carrot on the stick, was that they can use Yoda. And I would not be surprised if we later on find out that the film I was talking about is what Acolyte became. Unless, by some chance, the Taika movie is set in the High Republic era too. Which
I just imagine with Taika, he'll just do whatever. I assume no ties to anything. It essentially could be, you watch the Oral Knots stuff, like they did Existential Troopers. You know the Oral Knots? You're gonna dig. They spoof the saga, but they have their own thing. It's really interesting. But they did the the two troopers Taika did in the last episode, the episode he shot where they're sitting on the speeder bikes. They drug that out 20 minutes with conversation, going over existential existence, Yeah. And I'm like, and you're like, this easily could have been written by Taika. Like, this could be, it would piss people off. I mean, it'd be great for a whole episode of a show.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, with Taika, man, I can never tell. Because, I mean, Jojo Rabbit is so different from, anything else. I mean, even The Boy. Like, The Boy is way different than what we do in The Shadow. No, The Boy, that's really that. And I mean, I came on to Taika with Flight of the Conchords. We got the license back in 2007 for a t-shirt license, and I was like, "What is this?" Then I watched it, and not only I was like, "This is genius." I'm like, I don't know what to put on a t-shirt for this. What do you do for this?
What did you put on t-shirts for that?
The logo, because the
idea.
Well, because as you know, with music, lyrics are owned separately. Like, whoever writes those kind of owns that, So, like, they own the show, but they don't own the lyrics are a different thing for any of the songs. So you could put their faces, but a lot of guys, in 2007, people weren't wearing some big face of a dude. Those guys, Like, now I think it would work. And like, if you got that retro 80s Star Wars glitter look, like remember those Star Wars shirts they used to sell at Kmart, like you could do it that way, I think. But
right.
So I just sold the look because it was you had to explain this show to buyers at stores. And if I mean these people were older than me by 15 years and they're not watching HBO Flight of the Conchords, man,
right.
So yeah. So that's when I first heard of him, but I didn't know who he was really until Ragnarok, I put the two together.
Yeah, what's the vampire one? What We Do in the Shadows?
Right. Yeah.
So that's so good.
Yeah, and the show is equally great.
Yeah, I haven't got into the show yet. I haven't got a chance to get around to watching it.
Yeah, it's great.
Good.
It's
nice.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like with Taika, the way that I don't know what his method is. I haven't analyzed him enough to figure him out or to attempt to. But looking at what I know he's done, I don't feel like it's anything that isn't about sort of very standard human experience and the ridiculousness of the situations that we get ourselves in as living idiots. So I almost don't know if it matters where his movie's set. Like he did Thor Ragnarok. Like at that point, it's just.
Well, remember the rumors that you were talking about there being a Cantina movie at one point?
Yeah, the Mos Eisley film.
He easily could do that. I'm not saying he would, but he easily, like, when you go, I don't want to see a Mos Eisley film, but then I think Taika Waititi doing a Mos Eisley, I could watch that all day. Like an anthology where people come in and out of the bar, then they go out and they're off on an adventure, and then it cuts back to the bar, and and like you could see like almost like an American Graffiti side of not asymmetrical, but what am I thinking about? Like a story that's loosely tied together by the bar, right? Like you could see that something there,
Yeah. It would. I mean, I would even watch him doing like My Dinner with Andre in the cantina. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Do it, man. Make that like an anthology TV show. Just the Star Wars bar, and the people come in. It could be like Taxi Cab Confessions without all of the like erotic, whatever you want to call it, stuff.
in pod racers and talking with coffee.
Yeah,
in pod.
I want to see what drunk walrus man is. What's he got on his mind today?
Ponda Boba? Is it? Why do I know that?
Yeah,
I should know. Ponda Boba.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I was never a huge fan of Homeboy being Dr. Evazan. Doctor? No, that guy's just a piece of trash drunk who wants to go to bars and start fights. He's a soccer hooligan. He's not a doctor. Give me
the way I took it as a kid, and I didn't really think about it until I was older when the Star Wars manga, the first one came out. Hideo Tamaki, I think, drew that. Won an Eisner. It's my favorite adaptation of the first film. But I was like, Dr. Evazan. What if he's probably just that guy who cuts your kidney out, gets you drunk, you know what I mean? And then like at the cantina, and then you go home, you wake up, and someone lightsabered your kidney out at the side of you, and he sold your parts, to General Grievous droids and stuff.
Yeah, and that is where they essentially like put him. He's sort of like more of like almost like a mob doctor. You know what I mean? That was kind of like, I think, the way he was handled from memory.
That's too respectful. I'm thinking more like petty theft of organs.
Yeah.
I just need like a toe. Like, I'll get you a toe, right? Like, John Goodman should do the voice in the cartoon.
To bring it back to Bespin, Bespin Bulletin had that scoop about them filming at the Waterworks place or whatever it was called in Essex. See if my screen share will work here. So this is a photo. These are two photos going around, and I have to say that it is pretty much a logical conclusion that this, I think this is Scotland, set is going to connect to the Waterworks Essex set. This is probably the exterior for that interior. It makes, when you see the interiors, which I don't have a photo of the interiors on me right now, of the Essex set, but when you look at it, it looks like it could easily be the inside of this place. And this is basically a dam that they've gone and made to look very, ominous and imperial.
And that's the Cassan show, right?
Yeah,
because it's totally Rogue One. It's weird how Rogue One has an aesthetic.
Yeah,
it has its own aesthetic, even though it's Imperial era and it's like literally minutes before Episode 4. It has its own look for some reason. That's, I think, more Macquarie-ish. I want to say, like, it's just slightly more Macquarie-ish.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, and the only thing, like, my only critique of the whole thing is that it sort of is dreary. And in that dreariness, it makes it more difficult to set environments apart from one another very easily. But at the same time, I mean, I love the movie, so I've been
thinking about that because I listened to a few of your the podcasts that you did over the past couple days.
Yeah,
and it dawned on me about like tone in different films, like even with the Marvel films. And I was like, I think when people think about Black Widow or a Ragnarok or a Loki show, I think the tone is set by the POV of the character.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, Loki has its look because even though we're not seeing through Loki's eyes, the tone is reflecting his point of view. Same with Black Widow, same with Thor Ragnarok. That's Thor's point of view at that point in time. And that's why Rogue One can have, like, a vibe, and then something else existing in that exact same era can feel more like Episode 3, because it's really about the POV of the sort of main protagonist, right? Even if there isn't a main protagonist, it's, you know, like Cassian and Jin in Rogue One. I'm sorry, Urso, Jane Urso. Yeah, Jin
Urso.
Man, there's too many Jin Jajar, and I'm getting confused with the name. You know, I'm getting a lot of Jins now. It's weird.
Yeah.
So that, but yeah, I mean, I know it's like it's a simple, realization, but I didn't really think about it from that way. I was always thinking like the tone was set by the director or just the vague story, but I think it's more set by the POV of the character, like the lead protagonist in a way. So.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong at all. I mean, I think that like you could even use that justification for Luke Skywalker of, why does A New Hope look so wholesome? Why does it feel so wholesome compared to those? And it's like, because Luke Skywalker's a farm boy. He's way too wholesome. He has no life experience, and he goes out there and he kind of sees things as, I could kick a lot of ass when he can't, not necessarily, but then Han Solo kind of teaches him. That's kind of like the really, I think, efficient thing about that movie, about A New Hope, is that like Obi-Wan and Han Solo become sort of mentors in becoming a fighter and a man, if you will, and really quickly get him up to speed. And it's kind of funny because like you'll see people really accept that, like outright, like, yeah, of course. I mean, he's what Obi-Wan's teaching him stuff, and Han Solo's there, and Chewbacca, and they're like teaching him stuff. They're leading by example. But it's only Luke Skywalker who they'll accept that with. When they do that in Star Wars with like any other character who's not already seasoned, like Jyn Erso, then you end up it just gets all questioned to death. It's really kind of weird.
Even people sort of felt that way about Anakin on Episode 1. Like, oh, how can a little kid fly a rocket ship across the land at 600 miles an hour?
Yeah.
And I know it's a pod race, not a rocket ship. I'm like, believe me, I know that. But the average person coming out the theater, that's the terminology they're using. I remember specifically a dude complaining, it's a rocket ship. I don't get it as a kid. And I'm like, that you don't believe, like all the other stuff going on with aliens, and I can lift stuff with my hands. That's a bridge too far,
Yeah.
So
and it is, if you think about it, explained by midichlorians, by the fact that he has the high midichlorian count is evidence of some sort of use of the Force and some sort of tapping into it. So it's like, yeah, they're setting him up to be a genius at the Force. That's where they were going with it, anyways. But you get a bigger problem with that in the bigger saga, because he doesn't actually do anything amazing with it. You know what I mean? Like in terms of like if we see some Jedi who can I could stop time for a second or something weird like that for whatever, I could make fire or lightning come out of my fingertip. Like he has nothing like that he does ever that makes it, you go, oh yeah, he was a genius at it.
Yeah, well, that's the key problem, is that there isn't a point where he does anything that you find magical, I think. Like that is a cool sequence, but everyone in that sequence is pod racing. It's not like just him.
Right.
It's not like they were stuck out in the desert and the Sith are hunting them down and he built this pod racer and then they're on it and he's flying it, and there's a sequence where if he was the sole character doing that, then that stands out. But there's 13 other Muppets out on that track doing the exact same thing, and not dying. So I guess,
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm trying to get it to show the other picture that you uploaded for us today.
Oh yeah, speaking of episode.
Yeah, let's talk about that little buy that you did, because I am interested in getting this. I'm surprised I haven't. It's really just been apathy. That is the reason why I haven't had a chance to pick it up.
Well, it was $20 off. It was $180 on Amazon. I was like, well, these things tend to sell out at some point, and then they go to like $600, and I'm like, $180 is like a steal.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there an ebook version of it that isn't $180?
No. This is a giant book, man. Like this is, I own artist editions of like the Dark Knight Returns and artist books, This is almost as big as those, but it's way thicker. It's 600 pages hardbound. Like I can't stress how giant the book is.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the thing about like the Making of Star Wars books by J.W. Rinsler. If you get the English paperbacks, oh, so much nicer as a read. Not to really like look at
Right.
the pictures, but to read. And then if you get and then once you have the ebook versions of it, way better in that way because it's like you can like zoom in on stuff and really look at it closely, and then also you could read it comfortably. My big J.W. Rinsler books fell apart because they are
The bite.
so heavy and awkward. Yeah, the
Hmm.
binding just couldn't take me reading it 300 times. So,
Right.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
well, I snapped this picture right here because again you were talking a few weeks ago about how George Lucas said that he didn't listen to reviews or something like that. I don't remember the exact quote.
Yeah.
And then you said that's not true because like on episode 2 or 3 he was wearing a shirt that had a bad review on it or a direct quote, and so clearly he does. And someone, was it you or someone else, was mentioning that I think it was you who said like on Willow one of the characters is named after.
Oh, the two-headed dragon is the Ebersisk, which is Siskel and Ebert, and
Right.
General Kale is named after Pauline Kale.
Okay, right. So there you go,
So
right? And so this picture right here, it's like page 4 in the book. So it's like right off the bat. It's the first day of filming on episode 1. And George is wearing a shirt that says Star Wars, a film with comic book characters, an unbelievable story, no political or social commentary, lousy acting, preposterous, something, and ridiculously simplistic, an ability, in other words, a bad movie from the New Yorker.
So
You know.
basically, the guys who say that Star Wars isn't political believe pretty much all of that, except for it being a bad movie.
Except that over the next course of the next few shows, I got actual quotes from Lucas that refute all of that. So,
Oh yeah, nice.
yo, yeah, I'm gonna drag this out. It's a 600-page book. I figure we got room to fill. So yeah, but he specifically knocks that out the park. Like, so to the point where I want to put the quotes that he later says on my own shirts to wear around.
Right.
George Lucas, blah 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 blah. Like so. But I just think like that's the first day of shooting in Tunisia. Like I mean, I don't see George in basic T-shirts much anymore. So
Right.
like, it's kind of cool. I guess
Yeah,
they got.
yeah. We have him wearing the solo shot first shirt. He's like wearing that. Yeah, he definitely. Um, I think he gets hurt by it, and then I think he gets really hardened by it, by like the criticism, and then for like a long time would just like kind of like just straight up move on, just be like, okay, I've already done it, I can't undo it, and then he just kind of like moves on from there, and eventually though you could tell it did take its toll on him because he's after he sold, they were like, why'd you do it and stuff. He'd be like, well, everybody hates what I do. He started saying that. So it's like,
It's so absolutist, right?
yeah.
Like
And
everybody hated it, not everybody hated it. A lot of
yeah,
people hated it, but not ever. I know it's funny. So, but
yeah.
we're human, and it's just like it's one of those things where I think about how people are quick to say people will go out there and tell you their opinions when they don't know a person.
Hmm.
And then when they know a person, they'll be more guarded sometimes, like they'll be nicer and more like, oh, that's cool. And you kind of don't believe it.
Yeah.
But then when like they get attacked for the first time, then they're like, hey, everyone needs to get along. Stop attacking people. And you're like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, it's just, I always think about the levels, like when you get it at a super famous level, when you get it at like a moderate level, and then when you get it on a personal level. And then you could sort of see like Twitter's a great sociological, observational tool for this, where they can go, this movie was trash, name a movie that came out, Fast, Furious, Black Widow, whatever they think is trash. This movie's trash. They have no problem just saying thousands of people who put this together for years, right? This is just trash, it's trash. And then if you're like, you suck, don't be mean. We all need to
Yeah.
get along. Like, it's so weird how they're.
And then the same people who say don't be mean are the same people who lead like literal pitchfork mobs against people who they have no idea if what they're even talking about half the time. It's a clusterfuck, the whole thing, and it's true. It's like I have on a kind of a different level. I'm friends with somebody who made a lot of content where they would mock a lot of Hollywood, and then they started to get successful, and then they would have to like go to meetings and parties and dinners, and the people who they would mock would be there just like looking at them like, I hope you die.
Kevin Smith said that on his podcast not too long ago to Mark Bernardin, because Mark is more critical, and Kevin goes, look, I used to do that, and then I had to go to these functions and people would be there, you know?
Yeah.
And then go, hey dude, you're the guy who wrote and you said that thing about me, a whole video, you made money off knocking me, you know. I was like, I gotta be careful what I say now. Like,
Yeah.
that's an absolute truth, you know. So
Yeah.
it's
and it's like it is something where because you started off as like this teenager reading Wizard magazine, if you're like from our generation, where you're just like, yeah, F this adaptation and all that stuff. You just hate everything, and it's okay to. And then like the Kevin Smith movies come out, and hot takes on things that don't matter become kind of in vogue as a way of joking around. And then you end up with sort of this culture that is just all about like trashing like comics, trashing movies, and whatever doesn't work for you, or having a hot take on it. And it's like, ooh, that needs to change, because we're now to a point where you are interacting with those with the like, if George Lucas wasn't of that generation, he would be on Twitter with us probably. Like there would be times when, you know, he would be answering questions and stuff like that, and it's a much different environment than that, and it's more real in some ways than it felt back then, because it was like, you used to feel so far removed from like the pop culture. If it's just me and you talking, we're going to talk about how Avatar is a piece of junk and the visual effects are way overrated. And then, but in reality, like, it's like you're actually saying it to their face more than it used to be. And there's nothing wrong with being critical. I'm not saying that either.
I like I said, I got fortunate in that I started going to San Diego Comic-Con in 1992. That was when Image first came out. And I was like, what is this? Mm-hmm. And I would read Wizard magazine. But then, so Comic-Con was 3 days at the time, Friday through Sunday. And then I would go to con and talk to the artists about the Wizard magazine stuff. Mm-hmm. And they'd be like, look, man, you see how many artists are here? Why are there only the same 10 dudes in this top 10? You know, it's because they're friends with the guys who make the magazine, or it's a popularity contest amongst the people who write this. And so, you know, I understood that there's National Lampoons like S-Talking, you know, crap talking, whatever. I'm trying not to get you flagged on YouTube.
Yeah, if it happens, it happens.
You know, but playing the dozens, right? There's playing the dozens with Star Wars or pop culture. And then there's just like, they're not adding anything to the conversation, and there's almost like an echo chamber. It feels like the evil Sith Brody has like a double mic, you know, and you hook up two mics and you can just hear it, the same thing over and over. Yeah. And I feel like Stanley Kubrick did. Stanley Kubrick's a complicated guy, but I did read an interview once where they said he'd talk to you until you repeated something you said, and then he figured you had nothing new to add, and he'd stop talking to you. And I think about that. Like, how often have you talked to someone and then they just loop the same opinion every time? Almost like, didn't we just talk about that? Like
that's what I fear about doing this show every day.
Well, in defense though, right? Because I like that you always balance it out. In defense, not everyone's watching every show every day. So there's always a new person who's going to show up for the first time a year from now. So you kind of have to, you know, but I'm just saying that the arguments feel the same. Right. You know, like the one that I was not a fan of the movie, The Phantom Menace. I was conflicting because I loved the artwork and the production. Could watch it all day long. Loved the score. The movie, I'm like, oh, there's parts I like and I don't know. But the thing that offended me, I guess triggered me the word, was when people said George Lucas R-word my childhood. You know what I mean? I was like, that is I mean, like, I was like, what? What? He made the Ewok movies. Like, no offense. Like, you know, I mean, he didn't direct it, but, you know, he made them. He basically made them.
Yeah,
like they're not that great, you know.
Yeah, he is responsible. That didn't happen without his. It was his concept. But yeah,
it didn't ruin my childhood. And that came out during my childhood.
Right.
Like, it wasn't like I was like, okay, so it's forgettable. Like whatever. Like I don't care. Like I don't understand that. But you would hear it everywhere. You know?
Yeah. I think that kind of probably originated on the Ain't It Cool News talkbacks. I think there was talkbacks then. I feel like that was kind of where it.
Oh, there was.
Where it. Yeah, I remember that there was no talkbacks, and then they came, and I didn't remember when that happened. But anyways, yeah, pretty sure it was then, and it was kind of like where that echo chamber kind of started. And like I even saw things like, it's kind of funny because it's kind of weird. Like I feel like a lot of the, like, Clerks is great forever, but like I watched Mallrats today, and Mallrats was my favorite one of them, like as a teenager. And I watched like Mallrats today, I'm a little bit like, ooh, the sound effects and stuff like that. Like what is this, in a way, like things that you didn't catch like as a younger person. And but it kind of like, it made people think that they can be as witty as Kevin Smith writing for them, like on the fly as well. Like I won't say who it was because I don't think that would be nice, but I was at the Star Wars Celebration in 1999 at the very first one. And that scene in Chasing Amy when the dude gets up at the con and like, what's a Nubian
Hooper.
and all that happens. Yeah. Like you have like that whole
I got
whole
all the
exchange.
toys right over there.
Yeah, there was a guy who thought he can do that. And he was like trying to do it at Celebration on the open mic. And he straight up asked somebody who designed a creature if she designed the creature to look like her. If it was like a self-portrait, like in his like little stand-up shtick. The woman on stage begins to lightly weep.
Oh no.
It hurt her feelings so bad. And Anthony Daniels steps in and just starts like kind of like roasting the guy a bit, and then the whole audience turned on the guy, thankfully. But I was like, that was like in a way my first kind of wake up call of, oh shit, you those are movies and you can't do that, man.
Yeah. Those are literally fictional stories told in a hyper realized world that does not exist. It literally has credits and it ends, unlike life. It's not like the credit rolls when you die.
No.
Wouldn't that be something? You die and then the credits roll and it's all the people that you experienced your life, and it was like so and so will return. What? I'll return. So odd thought, but yeah, I really love. I bought the Mallrats Blu-ray, the re-release that came with blueprints and stuff. When I went to Comic-Con in it was in 93, 94. It was when that film first debuted. Kevin was there. He had a booth. He had no merch. And he just had Jay there. And I was like, you got to get the blueprints from the movie, man. And he was like, you think? I'm like, you think? like I have $20. It took me a whole year to save $20. I would put all the 20 down for the blueprints, Like I get it's a Looney Tunes cartoon, but I'm fine with that.
But fuck LaForce. I'm with you.
Well, he's a dude. He's Tank from Captain Power.
Mm-hmm.
The tank guy from Captain Power, the TV show Captain Power. I was like, that's the dude from Captain Power. Yeah. J. Michael Straczynski wrote that because
I had the Captain Power like main spaceship with the figure in it, and
it would eject out the seat.
Yeah, and I don't know if that thing ever actually worked. I remember
it did something.
I had the VHS tape, and you could kind of memorize it, so you could kind of learn it. But on the TV show, if you didn't record the TV show, and you just like tried to play it live, you're like, this just doesn't work.
Yeah, I know it didn't really work very well. I just remember missing the TV show every time and being stuck watching Photon. and it's a disturbingly weird laser tag show with puppets in space. It's odd.
Yeah. Fun times though. So Josh Dickel says, I've had the thought that maybe Taika's movie could be a Young Yoda movie. Seems like Yoda would be a character Taika would love to work with, and he could do awesome stuff with it. Yeah, I mean, if Taika was making a Yoda movie, I would be completely up to see what he does with it. at the same time, for what it's worth, the way that it sounds like Yoda is being designed in the High Republic, it doesn't feel like there's very much room for growth. He's not a different person in the High Republic era that we're seeing, not by much anyways. And maybe there's revelations to come that will change that and make me completely wrong. And I kind of hope so. Because I mean, Yoda lives, 12 lifetimes when you get down to it. He does not have to be the same. I'm not saying he should be like, a biker with like an earring and stuff or something like that. But he's going to go, like, he's going to have, I think, lots of growth over living hundreds of years. You would hope anyways.
They'll be like, this is our tribute to Easy Rider with Yoda, Yeah.
Like, I just don't believe in the Jedi, man. Like, the whole thing's failed.
Just gonna go out into wild space,
You're taking my speeder bike and I'm just gonna like write my poetry. I am.
He's got the Journal of Will's flag strapped to his bike, his speeder bike. Yeah, I could see it.
And then so we start to look at the prequels as being like, oh, this was his I was a hippie, but now I'm a yuppie, and I'm totally buying in. Full sell.
No joke. Yuppie sounds like a Yoda-like character George would have come up with. Like, Yoda.
It's his race. The race is
Yoda, Yaddle, yuppie. Yeah, I'm telling you, the Minch world. I can't get past that idea. Like, I
want little dozers from but as Yoda people. I want us to learn that Yoda is actually like 8 feet tall for a Minch.
Or he's a dozer. They just grow. And then they don't grow. Like, he's actually the largest person in his.
Yeah, he's
the funny. He was the largest dozer.
Like, I remember, I want to say, like, was it Heir to the Empire where you learn that Chewbacca has a stutter or something like that?
No, but I know what you're talking about. It was I think it was the A.C. Crispin Han Solo trilogy book.
Was it? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, where you first met him and he had like a roar, and it's actually like, yeah, I remember they're like and it might have been Heir to the Empire, but where the Wookiees tell that he actually has a stutter and he's bad. He talks that way because I think it was Heir to the Empire when Leia gets to the Kashyyyk planet.
Kashyyyk, yeah.
Kashyyyk, sorry. Kashyyyk.
Sorry to correct you on that. I feel like an asshole doing that, but yeah.
Hey man, whatever. Can you say my last name? No. So, no. Kashyyyk. I think they did say that. She's like, why don't you all talk like Chewbacca? And it's like, well, he has a stutter. Like, what? Oh, okay. Oh.
Yeah. And on the to go back to like the Taika movie, like that poster. I don't want to get too hung up on it, but that poster screams gladiatorial Ben-Hur, and so it makes me think that that's where we should be putting our guesses. Probably I'm
sorry, like, which poster?
For Taika's film, when they did the announcement, it was a Star Wars logo that was ripping off the Ben-Hur poster.
Was that the D23 event?
It was the Disney earnings call, I believe.
Earnings call, okay.
Yeah, the last earnings call even. Or the one before, and yeah, it's like Star Wars, and it looks ancient. At the same time, it does. And I was joking when I said this before, but it kind of looks like the Schoolhouse Rocks logo a little bit too. It kind of has like that kind of vibe to it. I started to wonder, like, what if he was doing Schoolhouse Rocks as Star Wars and it was a whole movie? It'd be ridiculous, but
if he was spoofing Ben-Hur, he could do the pod racing movie like that.
Exactly. I mean, if they were doing if it was set in a gladiatorial arena, that allows you to put a pod racing sequence in it. It allows you to do all kinds of fights. And he kind of seems to have done a gladiatorial thing in the Thor movie in a way too, right? Like, it kind of had some like stuff like that. The guy that he plays is like a fighter dude, right? In one of those things. So it's like, I wonder how much of that kind of idea is being moved over to Star Wars. But at the same time, he's like we were talking about, his movies are all so different, and he hasn't really done the same thing exactly twice in a row. So lots of respect there on the artistic front for him there. But when you go into Star Wars, do you go into Star Wars to do something new or to mash up the best of the stuff you've done before and make it happen? I don't know. because that's a
we've seen both, right? So it's a question. I just hope that whatever he does, that they just let him do it and don't freak out about it halfway through, and question themselves. Like, that's my only thing. Like I'm not saying we'll let him make a bad movie. It's a bad movie. No, but as you've ever pitched an idea to someone, and then when it gets to the finish line, there's just like a never-ending string of compromises.
Yeah.
To getting it through and over, and then people are like, "Why you should have stuck to your guns?" I'm like, I tried to get paid. Like, I do have a family to feed, so it is difficult. I mean, I hate to bring the Lego guys up. Well, the Lego guys, those guys, like the Lord Miller, but I think so long as Taika has a hand in writing it, or he's writing it or co-writing it, then I feel stronger that will happen. It's when someone else writes it and kind of they have like the vision, and then they get a separate director, that I think that conflict occurs more often.
Yeah, it sounds like, I can't remember her name off the top of my head now, but he's writing it with like a real, like a very, like an Oscar winning lady.
I think it's the one that he produced. He produced the film of the two girls in New Zealand.
Probably.
Yeah, I want to say I can't remember the name of that movie. It was cool.
Yeah.
It's not
and I started to wonder if she was still on it, because actually a friend brought this up to me, and it was like she was all up in the announcements about it, and then on some of the last ones they didn't mention her anymore. So it's like, is Taika writing this by himself, or did she write a draft, turn it over, and now it's his? I don't know.
A scriptment.
Yeah. I mean, and when you have like teams of writer director teams, you expect them to kind of stick together usually. But on these big Star Wars movies, if it's like Lucasfilm is deciding we want to make Rogue One, then they will bring in. I mean, that movie had like, I think 3 to 4 writers probably. I think it had Gilroy,
credited and uncredited. I think McQuarrie wrote uncredited, right? There's a lot of uncredited.
Yeah, I had all kinds
material.
of. Christopher McQuarrie was like on set. He was like the writer and on set for a lot of it, because I had a lot of documentation from that film and saw that, and and then Gilroy took over, I think, the final draft of it, I want to say. But
when it comes to cut footage, you're talking the other day about cut footage from films. Will we ever see stuff? I love Rogue One as it is for me, and there's a couple reasons for that beyond just the general aesthetic. But Gareth does have a more cinematic eye than Tony, right? Like, Tony's great with the story, obviously. Like, some of those shots that didn't end up in the film, like the Vader with the reflection in the floor on the Death Star, like those kinds of shots.
That one Kanye shot, that the Kanye video with Jen.
Right, yeah. So like, there's just and the different takes of the TIE fighter shots and stuff. Like, it would be interesting to see the alternate Gareth shots just from the cinematic take. I mean, the guy has such a great visual eye. Even the Godzilla film, I thought, was the best Close Encounters remake.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Like, when you really think about that first Godzilla film, it's Close Encounters with Godzilla.
Yeah.
Like, straight up.
Yeah.
He even with the train sequence is straight up. Remember when they're moving everyone out of the Devil's Dome, the Devil's Rock or whatever? That is, I'm like, this is straight up. We're in Close Encounters. All right. And I don't say that in a bad way. Like, that's a smart.
That's a great thing. If you're gonna riff on something, Close Encounters is a good place to start.
So, like, I do hope that since he played ball, I mean, that guy literally did the most professional thing ever when that movie came out, right? Like,
yeah,
he shut up and played ball. Like, that guy is that's hard to do.
and I've never really heard him come out and start like venting about it, and it's been years. So
why hasn't he directed an episode of Mando?
Yeah,
like, or Book of, I mean, yeah.
Is he directing anything? I mean, has he after Rogue One, did he just go like, I did it, I don't like the system, I don't like any of the stuff, and did he just walk away? I don't know.
Nothing that's ended up in Fat Man on Batman news. Like, I get my news sources, like, like, because there's so much, there's a
Yeah.
deluge of stuff. I try to get it from personalities I like listening to, even if it's accurate or not accurate. Like yourself, I like a lot of your takes. Like I think you come up with a lot of rational, not to kiss your ass to, but like smart, like uncharacteristic. It's not echo chamber takes.
Yeah.
Some people like Force Toast, they just have fun with whatever, which I like that goofy, nature to it. And I think Kevin and Mark have like a balance. And I figure if it gets to like a certain level on a show, I feel like, all right, it's kind of gone through at least some of the filtering process, because otherwise it's like, UFO. If you listen to every UFO podcast, man, you're just going to go nuts, right? It's the same deal with fan news.
Most of them are just, it's too much. And also like that's what's weird about fandoms, UFOs, whatever you're into. There's so much of it. It's so hard to like get into like where you find like, oh yeah, I like this, or I like this and they seem reasonable. like that's why like I'm not like I'll get like a place where I don't want any. I'm like, I don't want any nerd shit right now. I just need this to calm down. I don't want to hear about Captain Marvel or anything like that. I just want to, so I'll go put on like a true crime podcast, and I'm like, oh, my favorite murder. That's just my go-to on that one, and it's because those ladies are funny, and the research is solid, so it's like easy. You know what I mean? It's like, and
yeah.
So I kind of have my little I'm tired of this. I have like this like little clock of shows and people that I kind of cycle through for that stuff too.
Well, I don't watch pro wrestling not since, forever. Like since I was a kid, like maybe in 99, 2000. I did watch that one where The Rock fought Hulk Hogan, like for one, and I was like, okay, I'm kind of out of it, but I just wanted to see it when it came out. But 80s and 90s was like when I grew up with it. So when I get tired of stuff, I'll put on like a wrestling podcast or something, just like a Jim Cornette or someone who was there in the time frame, just so I can like go back to when I was a kid. Sometimes it's nostalgia where you just feel like you want to feel like you did. Like if I'm drawing, I want to feel like when I was drawing when I was a kid. Instead of wrestling, I can hear people talk about wrestling from like 30 years ago, even though I have I'm not going to watch wrestling. I'm not going to stream it or pay for it. I don't, like I have just like this interest in this particular moment in time to go back to for a period. And I don't have to hear about anything else. I know they're not going to bring up any DC movies or anything related to Kathleen Kennedy. I can just I can walk away,
breathe
from that. Yeah, I can breathe, right?
I stopped watching wrestling probably at puberty. I was like, I got into like punk rock, and I was just like, oh, and this stuff's fake. And the wrestlers who I liked stopped, kind of were getting phased out and stuff. And so I've never seen a wrestling match with The Rock in it. And The Rock seems like a nice man. I will say that much. But I don't fucking get why people love The Rock whatsoever. It makes no sense to me. And I've never seen a movie he's in that isn't complete dog shit. I don't understand it. Like The Rock doesn't have Commando. He doesn't have a Rambo. He doesn't have a Bloodsport even. I'm like, what is like The Rock's like as a movie thing? I saw the Scorpion King, and he was like the worst CGI I'd ever seen in my life. And I'm like, I respect him being what he is, because I cannot compute.
The one I go back to, so it was funny about the Scorpion King. At the time, there was a movie theater in Spring Valley in San Diego, and it was in like a small minority urban area. My buddy would take me to, and at midnight they would let their friends in. They'd have to run the reel for a film to make sure it worked when they'd get it in. Okay. So they would just let in the local neighborhood, right? We'd all go in there. They'd smoke what they'd smoke and drink what they drink. Yeah. And it was like being in like a psychedelic Muppet show where they watch movies. And so they watched the Scorpion King, and when the first time he punches a guy and he flies through the roof up into the air, like people were like Harry and the Henderson laugh, because this is, what is this? This is not the Mummy. Like, this is so strange.
Yeah.
When I saw the Lord of the Rings there, and watching a bunch of people who've never seen wizards cast spells is the best. Get him, like it was the best. But I think with The Rock, the underrated film that I can go to that I think is a good film is he did right after that. It was originally called Hell Dorado. It has a different name now. Him, Christopher Walken are in that. Ernie Reyes Jr. has a cameo.
Okay.
He actually has this moment in the beginning of the film where he walks into a club and Arnold Schwarzenegger comes on the screen, and Arnold looks at him and goes, "Good luck," and it's like the passing. And that movie, I forget because he changed the name at the last second, and it has like a dumb name.
I'm even more mad now. If Arnold comes on the screen and tells you good luck, why aren't you with Action Jackson fighting an alien in the forest? Like, come on, man.
He should have been in a Predator film. That is the natural.
Or he should have been Terminator or something. But like that's what I hope it happens. I mean, but like right now, I just don't see like that guy just to me has no like franchise film where I'm like, this makes sense to me. I mean,
he's trying with Black Adam, but I'm like, I don't know, man.
I don't know anything about that. I actually got a press release for it today, and I was like, Black Adam. Oh, I know him. He lives down the street from me.
Yeah, man. It's one of those things. I like the the Shazam. Like that was the first TV show I ever saw when I was a kid, and I was like, superhero. He's in a Winnebago, flies. It wasn't good, but I loved it, right? Because when you're a kid, you're like, I don't care, Yeah. But I remember from the comics, okay, he was like the bad guy, and it was weird because in the mid '90s they made Shazam or Captain Marvel. They made Shazam the bad guy, like in Kingdom Come. And so then I was like, all right, Black Adam. It was a weird. I mean, I'd always hoped that if The Rock got into the superhero business, he would have been like Namor or something like that. Like something more. I don't know, but this could be like anything else. The movie could come out and it could be one of those films where people were like, they didn't know what The Crow was before The Crow got done. It could. Yeah. I'm not saying it's going to be deep like The Crow, but it could be one of those things that catches your eye, or it can be another Tooth Fairy movie or whatever. Like
that's where I'm like on one hand I feel bad for him that in a way he's not a performer in the era where like Conan the Barbarian is a successful film. And I'm not saying he has to only play barbarians or something like that, but like the action movie stuff like that, like the 80s action guys had and into the early 90s, there was just so much of it, and there was like place to like take it. And it's like now it's like the Tooth Fairy film is where is the kindergarten cop equivalent of where you go to sunset your career in reality. And like
he bounced back from that. I was actually I was really like bummed when that Tooth Fairy stuff. I'm like, really? We went right to that? Like, damn it,
Yeah.
I was surprised he never ended up in an Ocean's 11 film. I mean, I know he was in Southland Tales, but that's a weird mess. So
so like I said, I like as a famous personality, I like him. But he's never done a movie where I've been like, I own that movie. I must own this film. Just
carried the whole film, right?
Yeah. Oh, and our buddy Jordan says, speaking of which, hi from Glasgow. Hey, dude, nice. Go walk on the Cassan. No, don't do that. I'm joking again. But
you said the other day, you were like, just get out in a costume, walk on set, and then you're quick like, no, don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't ever do that. Totally kidding.
It never dawned on me that someone hadn't tried. Like to that moment in my life, I'm like, I never thought about that. Like, someone had to have tried.
Oh no, I had a source who was out during episode 9 and was just walking, and a bunch of stormtroopers are walking between Black Park and the Pinewood, and they just walked right up there with them, shot like they were part of everything. Everybody's just talking about the day, what they filmed, how hard it was to march, how bad they are at marching. They're not really, military people and all this stuff. And and I got the whole opening that was cut now of the bog stuff and everything like that from a person who literally just joined the parade. And so it's totally possible. And I was almost, and this person was not dangerous for the record. They're cool, but I was a little bit like, do I kind of hide this aspect of it or not? Because I'm like, this is a security risk for them in general. Like some psycho could easily just have joined there and shot somebody or something. You know what I mean? You never know. I know it's a little better out there than it is here for that kind of stuff, but
Well, that was a park, right?
yeah, it's a park that's right up against Pinewood. And so what happens is they go and they film a lot of Star Wars stuff in Pinewood. Like pretty much most of the films have had footage shot in Pinewood in some way. I mean, I'm sorry, in Black Park in some way. Yeah.
Well, I was the wife hadn't seen Big Lebowski in a while, and I was like,
Uh,
well, 4th of July, we'll watch that. How about that? So yeah, that's my America hoorah film, right? The Big Lebowski, and the scene where they're on the rocks with Donnie's ashes.
mhm.
When they pull back, they're walking toward the camera to go offset. There's a little hill, and on the right side, you can see a hiker just walk right into shot. You know,
Oh,
and I'm
really?
like, look that. Yeah, like someone wasn't doing their job that day, and it's
Yeah.
clearly a hiker. He's just in shorts, and I'm like, that guy could probably pre-COVID get to a lot of conventions. If you could be like, I'm the guy on the rock, I bet you he could get a
Yeah.
table and sell photos of and sign just the guy on the rock. You know?
On like a side note, that's just some random brain fart I just had. The guy I don't remember who this was. He was kind of a bad guy if I remember, but it was at one of those. I was hearing something about like festivals and like music festivals and stuff like that. And this guy, he made his whole career by what he would do is he would fly out to a music festival the week before the festival and he would dig a hole. And in that hole, he would fill it with weapons and alcohol. And then he would go there, set his tent up on top of it, cut with a hole in the tent, and then he would then pull out a bottle of vodka, go out and sell it on the festival's black market, and weapons as well. So like, and that's how people get stabbed and stuff at those things.
Oh, like that thing that happened in Texas 2 weeks ago. They had like, did you see that? It was like a redneck palooza, something like that. They called it that.
Oh, I saw.
And
It's not
yeah,
Sturgis, but it's the other one.
yeah, it was some weird, like they gave it a name where I'm like, you're not helping the hillbilly,
Yeah,
assumptions.
they just raged. It was like a rager. Yeah,
And like people got stabbed and murdered there, and it was just like some
somebody
legitimate.
got impaled.
Yeah.
Somebody got impaled there. Yeah, wild stuff.
And everyone was worried about, when someone got stabbed with a pencil at Comic-Con, what are we going to do? Is it going to get violent at Comic-Con? I'm like, no,
Yeah,
there's no alcohol.
I saw a video on Public Freakouts, which is a guilty pleasure of mine, and on the Reddit subreddit. I don't post it, I just read it. But like this like girl is at like a convention dressed up in like a comic book like character. This boy just comes up and like decks her, but it was like the weakest punch I've ever seen in my life. And I was like, man, if you're number one, you don't punch a girl. You don't punch anyone, but you especially don't punch a girl because you had some kind of dispute with her. But also, the fact that you punched a girl and it was like the weakest punch in the history of the world, and you could tell he was doing his best. I'm like, you're never gonna live down the first part, but you're never gonna live down that punch either. If it was to a guy, you would never live down that punch.
Yeah, and then when she clocks him back and knocks him out, it's the classic F around and find out, right? Like it started as how it ended,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So Richie asked us, do you think Darth Plagueis could be in the Acolyte? Depending on how close the Phantom Menace, the series, is set, he could possibly be in it. Yeah, I always thought the Darth Plagueis, like the way that Lucas took it, I'm not saying I hate it, but it's challenging. Like with Lucas, Darth Plagueis is as a mun or immune. I'm not sure however you said that race, and he is alive during the Phantom Menace, and it's after Palpatine declares himself or gets himself elected Chancellor through the vote of no confidence that he gets him drunk and kills him. And it's kind of a continuity error in a weird way because like he introduces Maul as Darth Maul in the beginning of that movie, his apprentice Darth Maul. which you could just justify in his mind. Homeboy was already dead, and he was making his plans move. But it was always kind of like a kind of thing. And so if they have changed how Darth Plagueis lives or how long he survives, this Acolyte thing, the Acolyte itself could be Plagueis for all we know at the moment, right?
Well, so in the really world, to quote the Crow, Lucas created Plagueis in episode 3.
Yeah.
Right? He didn't have that written down anywhere. I mean, at least in script form, there was no scenes, no books. I don't remember ever reading about Darth Plagueis. I remember when Darth Plagueis and then the play on Sidious, or sorry, Darth Sidious, the play on Sidious in episode 2 with Sifo Dyas, which I always thought was just like a really bad, like, my name isn't Rob, it's Robert, And
it was even more in the original script leak for that. It was Sifo Dyas.
Sifo.
Yeah. He changed the writing of it and the pronunciation. But anyways, go on. Sorry.
All right, and then in the third film, he introduced that character in the space opera scene.
Yeah.
And so, like, in general, like, storytelling, especially in screenwriting, there's like rules are meant to be broken. So I'm not saying it's 100%, but the idea is that when you have a first act sets up in a 3-act structure, right? First act sets up characters. Second act, they do stuff. Third act, whatever happens in the third act, it kind of pairs back down to the core central character. Toward the end of the script or the story.
Act 1 introduced the problem. Act 2, they deal with it. In Act 3, it's resolved or not.
It expands and contracts back down. What you don't want to do is introduce new characters in the third act. You want the characters you've already introduced in the third act to complete whatever you set up in the first two. So general rule.
So let's put Jana in episode 9.
That's a problem because unless she's the sort of semi-protagonist of it, right? Like we start the film through her eyes, and then she encounters this group of people, right? The core team that we know, and becomes a part of them. But then she becomes the center of the film. This is very basic, and there's storytelling. And the reason why it happens is because we're locked in a room, engaged with something for a set amount of time, and when something comes out of nowhere in the third act, you're stopping, and you have to stop engaging, and you start thinking about what was that? Where is it going? Why isn't it come back? Where was this? Sometimes it comes across as Deus Ex Machina. In this case, the Darth Plagueis thing, then you stop thinking about Anakin's turn, and you're just thinking about he had a master. He did what? Is he talking about as what? You kind of miss things that may occur right after that scene because you're thinking of all this new stuff. If it occurred before, you can think about it, but then you can play it off later. There's very little room between the last 30 minutes, 40 minutes of a film to introduce a new idea, and then you're like waiting for it to come back, and it doesn't come back.
It should have been introduced in Attack of the Clones, and not as the Turn to the Sith thing, but it would have had the same meaning. If it was introduced there, then
if the character who bought the clones was Plagueis, right? Like someone named Plagueis, right? P. Legis, whatever's in the journal, right? P. Legis, Plagueis, like whatever. Then that would come back, but the Sifo Dyas thing never comes back. It's just another thing that gets added to the mix. Yeah,
it's definitely weird. And really quickly, I want to say that Jana herself is fine. And the actor was good. It just was the writing and directing's fault that made it not make that much sense and for the PR to have pushed her and to have alluded to her being Lando's daughter, and at one point she actually was Lando's daughter. And that's what makes me wonder if that stuff was all put away, or is that Lando project that we have coming out, will it feature her?
When I think about that character and the relationship, right? So she's supposed to be Lando's daughter. I really think about like the Duel of the Fate script. Like it makes more sense if she was a refugee on Coruscant, and there was all these stormtroopers or ex-stormtroopers who were holding up there.
Yeah.
versus some random rebel, Endor moon for no reason, right? Like it just you take these things that we know, Coruscant, we know stormtroopers. Here's a new character, but she's sort of tied. You can reintroduce it because she's introducing this part of something we already know, Coruscant, and it still takes it and shoves all those things from 6 movies ago and brings it back to the end.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, but now, no offense to that sequence on Endor in Episode 9. If you just showed it to a random person who saw Return of the Jedi, they don't get Endor from any of those shots. There's oceans. Not to say there can't be oceans on Endor, but
until you see the Ewoks that you on that one part that you go, oh yeah, okay.
Even the Ewoks, you gotta zoom in to see them. Like it's not like they stood. I mean, they're there, but they're not. It's hard, man. It's hard to like say like. My wife was in the theater. She didn't recognize that was Wicket or Ewoks, and he had a kid. Like it just wasn't. It was odd, And I just think again, that's one of those things where it feels as though the people who made that decision, JJ, at the end of the day, the director takes the credit, good or bad. That's what Ridley Scott says. Like whether it's good or bad, the director gets the credit. So JJ decided to go that route, and that leads to a result that feels conflicting, and not fully fleshed out. Is what I feel when I watch it, right? So.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch Episode 9 again because I feel like I just keep saying bad stuff about it. So I plan on watching Episode 9, talking about the good stuff about it here. Bespin said it was speculation in the episode. They just laughed about it. Yeah, and I do think that it is going to. I do think that we're going to see Yoda on screen because it would be crazy not to. And who is it who always asks me? Oh wait, is my mic too low? Test. Sorry about that. If I am not talking into it, somebody just said, Jason, can you turn up your mic? Let me make sure that I got my settings right here. Cam and mic, is it correct? Audio. Yeah, it is correct. Okay, it does look like it's coming in a little low though. Okay, hopefully it's good. So, anyways, let me know if the audio stays bad. I apologize. Yeah, shaved head, Jason. Got to shave that head. Can't get a haircut now. The Cassan pictures are from June, right? Weird how they're only now getting traction. Yeah, and the only reason why I didn't really care about them again as much as the fact that I thought that they linked up to Bespin's last scoop. So
they have a very Hoth turret like look to it, doesn't it?
Yeah,
like
it's totally pulling on that same exact vibe of somebody tweet him. Okay, wait, hold on. Everybody's saying Williams. He said it may not be speculation that they just dropped their new jingle. They have a new jingle. Those pictures are recently from the same Scottish set. The set was still filming last month. Darth Elvis went up to take the pictures. He did a breakdown on Santa's channel. Oh, cool. Yeah, I have no idea where those pictures originated from, so I'm glad that we can give credit to him because he deserves it. Richie says, do you think Lucasfilm has any interest in doing anything with Darth Plagueis, or just the vocal minority of the fans that actually want to see Plagueis' story expanded? Yeah, I gotta say, like, when it comes to him, if they do something that seems like Darth Plagueis, then they should just make it Darth Plagueis. But at the same time, there's so very little actually there, other than like, oh, here's his alien race, says George Lucas, and he was Palpatine's master. So it's like, do you get to Darth Plagueis via Darth Plagueis, or do you get to him through a different character like the Acolyte?
Not to get too like industry technical, but I tend to go, well, it depends on what deal they have. Like if the show, the head writer, showrunner, I know Marvel calls them head writers because they don't do showrunners. Does Lucasfilm do showrunners? Is she officially a showrunner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Leslie Headland?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does she get IP points on new characters? Because that's the reason what JJ does. That's why there's a red arm on 3PO. That's the only reason there's a red arm on 3PO. So when he gets a little chunk of that anytime a red arm 3PO shows up anywhere. Which is why we were told when they made the Force Awakens shirts. I wasn't on the project at the time because I got out of the t-shirt industry. My buddies were all on it.
Yeah.
And they were like, careful with the red 3PO because we got to pay for stuff like, there's like extra money they lose.
Wow.
A little chunk, a little.
I did not know that. That's crazy.
Yeah. And that's why he has the same deals with the Star Trek stuff. So they'll add things that's why there's always a new ship designer. Batman has a different suit every time. It's not just because they want to do it, for the story. They get points off those toys featuring that specific thing,
Right.
So that's very specific, and it just depends on the deal they have. So if she doesn't have a giant IP deal, she'd be more inclined to use pre-existing characters because why create new ones, right?
Right.
It's more effort than But if there could be that it can happen. I don't know what the deal is though. So
yeah, I would have to say that like just guessing, Leslie Headland has had like some Netflix success. I'm gonna guess that she probably isn't gonna get that JJ Sweetheart deal where you can change 3PO's arm and get paid from it. That's just a guess, and I hope she does, because I mean I don't give a shit how much money Disney makes. I hope the people making the stuff are the ones who get taken care of in the end. But something tells me that when you go with younger filmmakers or people that haven't had like huge mainstream success, they probably don't get that rad of a bargaining.
Plus, with the streaming deals, they just make they're not really filmed, so it's a different deal. You know what I mean? It's like a slightly, But if you do well, we'll bump you up to the film and then give you the film deal, and you'll get stuff on that. Like, and that's another reason why they always have their own production company, because the production company sort of falls in with that, versus just one person. Like, so like Bad Robot would get the money from that, and it does happen. It's unfortunate because when you have something that's cool, here's an example. For the longest time, we weren't allowed to put Deadpool on t-shirts because Rob Liefeld created the character, and at the time when he did in like 91, they had a 5% deal at Marvel that you get 5% of any licensing or any royalties on anything you make. So he made Cable, Deadpool, all these characters. They happen to get super famous, and licensors are ruthless. They don't want to. These guys don't want to spend. I couldn't get them to buy me a Cintiq, or I had to bring my own equipment to work. Because they're like, you don't really need that. And so it was like, all right, I'm making you money, but like I want to keep my job, so I'm gonna work the way I normally work.
Yeah.
They're just ruthless, and so they'll be like, don't put that on there. But the demand from Walmart was so big. They're like, you either do this or you lose the account. Like, there are times where, like there's this friction behind the scenes between the, when they want to sell stuff.
You know what? That explains why when I saw some Acolyte concept art and Yoda was in it and he had a purple Speedo on, like a Superman underwear over his robes. And it must be Leslie Headland really wanting just to get those t-shirt points for purple Speedo Yoda.
Every time he has his red rocket ship pants on, you know what I mean? Cha-ching! Cha-ching!
Yeah. Yeah. It was always the 3PO's red arm thing. At the time when it was happening, I was like, that's weird, but okay, I guess. Maybe there's going to be a good reason for it. It was like,
what's weird is in the movie, he goes, "Bet you're wondering about my arm." Like, why? Why do that? Like every line in a movie is money. It's like
JJ's like, because I want you guys to talk about how I got paid.
yeah. Honestly, like you get that guy a little tipsy.
How much I got paid, Anthony. Tell him how much I got paid.
You take him to Scum and Villainy, you know what I mean? You throw down a few blue milks, you're gonna get the truth out.
Yeah. But that said, like it was. I still look back on the people who were insisting that Darth Plagueis was in the movie and that Snoke was Darth Plagueis and all that kind of jazz. And I like when you look back at that, like forget all of the trash that came with it and all of the like the fake stories and the Mike Zero moments and stuff like that, and just kind of like look at what it was. If you were gonna bring back Palpatine the entire time, like, well, Palpatine, he found the way, but like Plagueis didn't know, so Plagueis didn't really have that way to stop people from dying. So then Palpatine did, but he didn't have it during Revenge of the Sith. You could tell. He's like, maybe we can get it, or when he does get it, he doesn't share it with Darth Vader. But it is weird because the movies weren't made with a straight up layout, obviously, about what was going to happen. That if you were going to bring back Palpatine, that they didn't bring back Plagueis, because it would have made sense to have had those things interlocked together.
If they were gonna,
that to be what keeps Plagueis, or that's what keeps Palpatine up at night, is the fact that he could come back, he can too, and that
the thing that kind of like, I'm not saying gets me down, but the thing that was like I was excited about when remember that shot, the reading room where they were all reading the script, doing like a read along, with all the actors, the black and white shot, I was like, man, Andy Serkis is gonna play the new bad guy. Like, how genius is that? Like that guy can really act. He's got that grin. He's got almost like a Palpatine like grin. Yeah. So I was like, oh, this will be great. And he was the CG guy, the Snoke. I'm like, all right, we'll see him train. Take him back to complete his training, right, in Force Awakens. I was like, oh, we'll see him train Ben.
Yeah.
And then, okay, it went the way it went. All right. And then the third film, he's just like a fetus, like a bunch of them just in canisters. Just like yeah. I never would have thought that shot, that it's just a bunch of, when you leave a bunch of pickled pig's feet in a jar at like a bar or something, it's a bunch of pickled Snokes just lying in jars everywhere, like that's the end of Andy Serkis I'm getting, like, the prequels did this to me, where it was like, you take some of the greatest talent and you just go, yeah, they're there. You gonna do something with them? Nah, they're there. Like, come on, like, you got Andy Serkis. He made me like the Claw guy in Marvel. I don't even know the Claw guy. Like, like I don't know this character, but I like him. Like, he's fascinating to watch on camera. He knows how to do the thing.
Yeah, I feel like in a weird way with Episode 9, Snoke had a ton of intrigue. He would sell comic books. Like when they did like the Kylo Snoke comic, people were talking about the comics like a lot. And I felt like he really kind of destroyed any money he gets off Snoke. Good thing he had that red arm 3PO idea. No, they're not really making that merch anymore anyway. But it's like I don't think we're going to see Snoke on merch anytime soon. And like I wish that there had been more of like almost like a horror film like aspect to it. Like almost like if we see Snoke is back, and then all of a sudden he starts to not realize what's going on, and then like outburst this like old wrinkled up wet Palpatine covered in like ooze, like he was in the Poltergeist there, and he was like reborn out of him, and that was always his game.
He comes out of Snoke.
Yeah,
like Snoke is the husk, and then like a cicada.
Snoke is like, what the fuck? He has no idea. He has no idea this is happening to him. And it's great. Yeah, and then it would have just like, but instead, like the way that it went was a bit weird, and I also believe that the Snoke in the tanks thing, I think that might have actually come a little late in production. I don't think that was always there.
It looks like a really quick matte painting.
I think it was included much later into the film, because I heard about it that, oh, it sounds like we're doing this, and then I finally saw like what they were doing, and I was like, okay, so this is where we are. And I still think like Exegol collapsed on itself, but what if down the road, if there is any Snoke love, if Snoke does somehow get still loved years from now, are they going to have like people digging into the planet and excavating like a Snoke from there and bringing him back or something like that? Because,
well, look, I mean, if you could sit in a room and whiteboard it, in hindsight, like Exegol could have easily been like the evil Kaminoans.
I say Kaminoans.
Kaminoans. Because Snoke looks sort of like a Kaminoan. They could have been like, the Kaminoans could have been the nice ones, like the Mogwais, and the Snokes could have been the Gremlins.
Or the Snokes could have been the Kaminoans trying to resurrect Palpatine and including Palpatine's DNA with their own, and that's what they made. Like, there's all kinds of weird places that it could have went. That,
like, I think that I just get back to, like, I'm not gonna go and say this was a wasted trilogy, like people say. Because in 10 years,
It's
people grew up with this. They're going to be like, that's my favorite trilogy. I've learned that with the prequels. It's a really good lesson. Oh, I'll put this in a pin in it. But the thing that, like, if you're going to say this is the end, if they had said this was the beginning of 6 new films, right? I'd be like, okay, new adventures, new era that's going to wrap up some of the characters from the old trilogy, but we're going to get 6 new movies. When they say it's the end of a previous 6 films story, then it's like, well, you need to bring stuff from the first 3 films and the mid 3 films and mash them together and like have life. You got to reckon, like, yeah, you defeated the Empire, but you didn't defeat. There's still all this leftover residual stuff that hasn't gone away, you know, and it's there. You know, like, there's still Confederate statues hanging. Like, there's still Palpatine statues.
Right.
Like, we knocked that one down, but there's still these over here. And, you know, there's these separatists. They've been holding out, like the brown shirts and Firefly for 50 years. You know?
Yeah, and there's people who prospered under Palpatine, I'm sure, who are not happy about the fact that it's falling apart. Which is going
and when they called it
Star
the
Wars.
first, so when they called it the First Order, I thought, like, that means, like, it had to be the first. If it had been called the New Order, then it would have been, it's the leftover Imperial stuff.
Yeah, but Joy Division was better. Everybody knows it. So.
It's true. It's absolutely true. Yeah. What am I thinking?
Sorry. Yeah.
Snoke TV is what they should have called it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So, Mr. Tail says, not enough Ewoks in episode 9.
Murder bears.
Murder bears. I am a big fan of the Ewoks. Return of the Jedi was like as a kid, that's my favorite Star Wars movie. So it was kind of weird, and not to keep going back to Kevin Smith today for some reason, but when Clerks came out and there was that, like, the Ewoks, the teddy bears kind of conversation in the movie, the puppets or Muppets or whatever he says. That was the first time as a Star Wars person, I was like, what? Anybody has a problem with this? It's great. I love Jabba's palace. What are you talking about? Like, I thought it was hilarious, but at the same, because like Randall is ridiculous, but I was of the age where the Ewok cartoons, they suck. If you like it, cool. If somebody digs it, cool. I watch it every now and then. I dig the theme song. It's pretty fun. But
did you get the toys?
I had the toys as a kid.
They were like this. They were like those little. They don't move. They were just solid little figures that we kind of drop into the tree set. You know,
there were actual, like, ones that, like, did. There were like
from the movie. Ones. From the movie, but the TV show ones did not move. They were like the Smurfs toys.
No, they had a play school Ewok village that were non-posable.
That's the one I had.
But yeah, Kenner made a droids and an Ewok slime with, like, dual locks and stuff, and they were meant to sit next to your Star Wars figures, but they looked cartoony. They didn't, like, make them more, like, in line with the original line,
like Jackson.
And like, they all had coins. They all had, like, the Power of the Force 90 or 85 collector's coins, and I got most of mine at Toys R Us on discount. They were discounted quick. They were like, and anyways, yeah, I love the cartoons as a kid. As a kid, they were completely fun. But to go back to what you were saying about, like, this trilogy, if this trilogy was just a series of films, regardless of the connective tissue to everything else, they would have their own fan base. And like most sci-fi fan bases and even cult films become cult films because they grow over time, because there's this thing that somebody likes. And so this trilogy isn't a waste, and it isn't trash at all. It's completely has its own audience, just as the prequels did and the originals do. And I happen to be in all 3 of them personally. I think I just like Star Wars enough at its core that they all work for me. But once again, it's like it doesn't mean that we can't be critical of all of them. I mean, one of these days we should do the biggest trolling episode ever and be like a critical look at The Empire Strikes Back. You know what I mean?
That'll be the only one they make gifts out of too, right?
Yeah.
Like, remember the time you said this? You know, like, oh no.
Dude? Yeah,
I can do that. I can look objective criticism. I can criticize. I can objectively criticize my own work. And you have to, like, as an artist, you have to take a step back and go, what did and didn't work and how do I improve? I get all that. And I think the thing with the prequels is like, after Revenge of the Sith, like, I walked away from it. I'm like, this wasn't the story I wanted. It's fine. I enjoyed the music and the production, but I needed a break from Star Wars. And this is not my thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I'd come back to the prequels until, of all things, in Rogue One. In Rogue One, I was loved all of it. But the thing that got me, and I didn't think it would, is the scene when Bail Organa reappears.
Yeah.
At the Rebel base. And I gotta be honest, man, like, I almost choked up. I don't know what it was about that guy, Jimmy Smits, you know what I mean? Who wasn't in the Phantom Menace. Remember they had that other guy that was going to be Bail Organa? He was in that trading card or something.
Yeah.
Weird.
Pumpkin something. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and I was let down that Bail wasn't in Phantom Menace. Just the character alone. Because I've been waiting to see Bail Organa. He's going to be the guy. And he's not in. I'm like, what? But I think Jimmy Smits has a similar profile to Toshiro Mifune. Right, from the Seven Samurai and Hidden Fortress, and there's something especially in that movie, he carries himself, as a nicer Mifune. Like, you can't really approach him. You can't approach, like, he'll kill you. But he has a presence. I don't know what it is, man. And in that moment, I was like, man, I miss that. I don't know. I miss it. So I started re-engaging with that era again. Outside of my 19-year-old jaded 20, George, could have done this but didn't, and come around on it. So I go into the sequel trilogy. I mean, the first one had already come out, but I go into The Last Jedi and I go into Rise of Skywalker, knowing that there are groups of people that, even they say they hate this now, you watch 10 years from now, they're going to be like, it was actually underrated and you didn't appreciate it when it came out. It's going to happen because there's people who I didn't see. The only silence I heard in the theater was during the third film, The Rise of Skywalker. That was the only time I heard the awkward moments from some people in the theater. Like when Lando comes out of nowhere, people were just like, what? Like, it was confusing for the audience. Yeah. But during the Phantom Menace and during The Last Jedi, no one walked out of there going, boo. I didn't hear it, until I got on the internet, so.
Yeah. That's the thing about these films is that it takes 10 years until, like, it all shakes out and they could be sort of graded and reviewed on their own merits rather than expectations or what they should have been, or the second guessing kind of stuff. It takes a long time until like if you just left Phantom Menace, or even in the first year of The Force Awakens, you'd have thought Force Awakens was a 5-star film based on, and maybe it is, I don't know, but based off of the exit kind of vibe of that movie. And even Rogue One, I feel like has actually, I had a huge Rogue One burnout, which is on, like me, for a Star Wars film. It's like I didn't have it for the other ones. Something about that one like burned me out, but it might have just been Star Wars in general and all of the stuff that came with it. I don't know.
Well, you're in the thick of following production on those films too, so like that had to be exhausting.
Yeah, at times it can be. But now I'm like, I feel like that movie is really, really good, and it's really, really well done. And I watched it about a month ago now, and I had the best viewing of it I ever had.
The shots of just like the fallen, like crumbling Jedi statues in the dust in the desert, things like that. I'm like, that's iconic artist-driven imagery. That is like what Star Wars is built off, like that key thing, that you see that visual and you can't forget it. So like, that's one of those things that I look to when I go into these films. Like, what am I going to remember? What really stands out for me? And like that stood out for me. And of all weird things, like the Vader scene was great, obviously, but like the fact that like when they go to the opening, so I read The Catalyst. I listened to the Catalyst audio novel before going into Rogue One. So my experience with Rogue One was like that novel ends with like, all right, here we go. Like I was waiting. It was like, and I tried to explain to people, I know you don't want to hear. And I was the guy who said it. You don't want to hear it if you read a book to understand the movie. You don't. But that book, when you see the flashback sequences in the film, they're from the book. Yeah, they're from when Mendelsohn's character would go to. I know I'm not good with names.
Krennic.
Krennic he'd be in the apartment with Jen's parents talking about the problems and the construction's going bad on, it's taking a while for the Death Star. They need wins, our careers are at stake kind of stuff. And then when he takes off with his daughter and the Borgellet with Ghost Dog.
I saw Ghost Dog in the theater.
All right. Yeah, I saw a double feature of Ghost Dog and Six String Samurai because that's how I roll.
I used to own Six String Samurai on VHS. I wonder if it holds up. I haven't seen it in years.
If it doesn't, it needs a remake because it's a fantastic idea and a great name. The
concept is good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it leaves when they get there. It's just like, but that they get there. There's that, but just that sequence with the way they're living, it feels wet and dirty. It has the texture that I hadn't seen since maybe Empire. Because even like Jedi is dirty, but it's very set driven.
Yeah.
Like I think the dirt comes from the emulsion, the film emulsion, this film stock more than the texture of the sets. Mm-hmm. But Empire, like on Dago, has that wet and like, when you're like, I need a bath feeling. Like everyone in there is wet, but they all need a bath. Like they're just dripping with moisture and dirt. I just love the texture of it. It's my jam.
So Mr. Hamilton says, maybe Plagueis conned Palps that he was dead. Plagueis wasn't interested in what Palps was chasing, in essence, transfer. He was looking for real immortality. Maybe he'll be back for real post sequel trilogy. Yeah, and that was, it was always weird that they didn't use it for the sequel trilogy, considering what they did use in the end. And then I guess the takeaway is Plagueis could always come back, I guess. Considering what we know or what they've done. But at the same time, if it's in a Skywalker saga thing, it's Plagueis coming back is going to feel like, a Death Star 2. It's going to kind of feel like that. So they're going to have to do it like in a really like I think they're going to have to introduce it as almost what they were doing with Maul, like where you introduce it like what he's alive and he's there, but it's like not the point, and then have it like be like the backdrop of this Shadow Master kind of thing.
Well, they did the Maul thing before Revenge of the Sith, didn't they, or was that after? Because it was in the comic. I can't remember when the comic came out. Where he had like the spider legs.
Oh yeah. That was like a Star Wars like Visions kind of thing with where the ILM guys got to do their like takes. The concept artist guys got to do their stories, and that's where that came from. But like in Solo, where you see like Maul is the one behind the crime.
Right, he's behind their version of the Black Sun.
Yeah, so right. and all, but not related. Black Sun, not related to my friend Black Adam down the street, or the movie Black Adam,
or Black Hole Sun.
totally different, totally different stuff.
Right. Chris Cornell comes back and kills us all. But
what was I gonna say? Was that So like now, if they want to do it, they have to like tread so lightly and handle it with like such finesse. But maybe Acolyte's going to be the start of that path. Like what is Acolyte gonna like reveal? Like it's such the name obviously means apprentice. The original idea for Snoke that was being talked about behind the scenes was that he was an acolyte of Palpatine. And that was what the assumed idea was. And then obviously nobody committed to a backstory to him or it, or how that worked. And then we end up learning he's just Palpatine in a giant kitty body because he saw Avatar before Return of the Jedi somehow. And so when we put all that together, it's like, man, it's a complicated one to resurrect. I hope that they do something with it though.
But if they do and it goes well, it's like when people watch WandaVision and really got into the characters of Wanda and Vision, and then all of a sudden everyone was like, go back and watch Age of Ultron, it's actually good. And for me, I worked on the licensing for that film, and I was like, it's a good film. It's a fine. I watched, I'm like, This is a fine film. I don't know why people hate this so much. I didn't get it, at the time.
I'm in that audience. I saw it and I was just like, I don't know. Okay, whatever. It didn't mean much to me. And then now I enjoy it a hell of a lot more after WandaVision.
Yeah, so it can it's like when Lucas said, when you watch the prequels, you'll come back and get more out of it. And sometimes that's true and sometimes it's not. But it is true. When it works, it does reframe your viewpoint because you have more information that fills in way more gaps. So it can totally, it can make the prequels even richer, than they were unable to be for whatever reason,
Yeah.
So that's my hope, is that whatever my hope is that whatever they do, that this just, it makes me appreciate other things more. But if it's just its own thing, that's fine too, because Lord knows could you just imagine the pressure where you're like, I gotta tell this story about a Sith? I mean, just write down all the ideas. I guess they went to Sith school and got bullied from the Sith. Someone stole their Sith ding dong, and you know what I mean? It was all downhill from there. Like, you could write a lot of bad ideas. You could write more bad ideas than good ideas, when you just whiteboard those scenarios.
Right.
So it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I've been to the point since even maybe before the sequel trilogy was even actually made, where I've always said this. The concept of a trilogy makes almost no sense. And looking at even in 2012, Indiana Jones wasn't a trilogy. Star Wars was far from a trilogy. It was like we were calling it 2 trilogies, and now we're calling it 3 trilogies. It's like 3 films to tell a story doesn't always make sense, especially when it's an ensemble. Like if it was just focused on Rey, it would have been a trilogy where she goes through these 3 different stages. Okay, cool. But they're ensemble films every time. And imagine if all of these Marvel things were always a trilogy. It would be so much worse for it. Star Wars would be so much better if it didn't have to worry about being a trilogy every time. Like Rian Johnson really could have wrapped up the initial story that was being told there in the Last Jedi. Like he really could have done it, and then we could have ended up with another story where Palpatine now returns or whatever. Like there was just so much that so many places they could have taken those characters in that story if they weren't confined to only making 3 films. And they're gonna make these movies forever. So why do we as fans take it that there's only a commitment to it if it's a trilogy? Because it's not really true.
I think too, so there's 2 ways they could have gone about it. Like my thinking in 2015, 2016 was, especially after Rise of Skywalker in 2019, was that after the Lord of the Rings, one must rethink what a saga is. Because even though those were 3 films, there were 3 films because New Line said so. With the extended editions, they're almost 6 films worth of content. They're like 4 hours each, like they're not really. And those books don't dictate 3 films. But after the concept of those movies took off, one must the idea of an extended story changed in cinema. And then the Marvel movies changed everything, where each character is getting 3 films before they do a get together. Each character got their 1 film, but Iron Man had 2 films before there was an Avengers 1.
Yeah.
So there's like 8 films before you get to Avengers 1. And being that Disney owned Marvel, my thinking in the last year or 2 has been, they should have just announced some new Star Wars movies and said, these aren't the official 7, 8, 9. We're telling us we're gonna introduce new characters, do some new stuff, and then when they get together, that'll be the 3 film, like the Infinity War and Endgame and whatever, the epilogue, whatever, so those numbers become, the big set piece story. But to introduce everything, the audiences were just so much more. We had 23 films before you get to an Infinity War film, right? 20 movies before you get to Infinity War. It's like, I couldn't imagine Marvel going, all right, Iron Man, Captain America, Infinity War. Could you imagine? And that's it. Okay, So it's just times have changed,
and it's time to like, and that's like the thing with like Ryan Johnson's the Ryan Johnson trilogy, is it's still in that trilogy kind of thing, but what if it's better than, what if there's more to it, what if there can be more to it? And so people want things to continue. I honestly think, maybe I'm wrong, but like the Raylo audience probably wouldn't have been mad if there was 4 films of them going back and forth with that romance and
Romancing the stone with lightsabers, you know,
mm-hmm.
like seriously, like a
Yeah.
each one is not saving, each one's saving the other at different points. It's not anyone is like the key hero, right? It's this duel back and forth, right?
Yeah, like no one would have been mad about that. No one would have been mad if there was more Rey or more Finn or or Ben or Kylo, whatever, however you want to look at it. Like none of that would have hurt anybody, but they were so locked into it being a trilogy, and it either needed to be 2 films or 4 films, is what I feel like. Like with where they they took it. Either should have ended on Ryan's, or it should have should have had another film to make 9 be able to do everything that it wanted to do. So
They should have gone ballsy and been like, guys, 9 and 10. You know what I mean? Like, just to get rid of that trilogy stigma. Like, now we're also doing a 10th film. You know, what?
And then our buddy D'Angelo's like, I was hoping The Rise of Skywalker was referring to Rey starting a new Force sensitive order called Skywalker. Yeah. And like I've always liked that idea as well. And
I mean, let me tell you why they didn't do it, though. I can tell you why.
10, 11, 12.
Well, no, they didn't do it because the word Jedi, it just sells money. It's too much money. You could just put, we sold shirts with just Jedi on it. Like, you could sell Skywalker, but that is one, even though we know it's a new order, it's a new form of Jedi. They just want to sell that name. They're not giving up the names, you know. But I'm with you. They should have. I mean, Lucasfilm has such the ability to create and set the tone for everyone else without doing much. I mean, look how quickly Mando shifted everyone. Everyone's like stagecraft, and now you can do big budget movie like series, and like they people still consider them at the forefront of things, even though maybe they aren't, right? Like the technology in the movies hasn't really pushed boundaries since the going digital, right? There's nothing. They're like a blend of nostalgia and then innovation, and the innovation has happened more on the TV side, I think, than the movie side. Yeah. So I love that idea, though. It would have been great if the new book series were just called Skywalkers with an S.
And I would be up for them even going down that route and making it where Jedi sects come up, where there are some that are Skywalkers and some that are straight up Jedi. And then that way they could actually be in conflict with one another. Not saying that's like war, but maybe close to it, or maybe things that begin to pit them against themselves or against each other, even though, and it like there's no one religion when you get down to it. It's kind of weird that if the Jedi were able to even get there. Like, isn't that kind of a strange concept that like
no when the fan base was tossing that idea around speculation before episode 9, right? Like maybe it should be, or it was after or before, I can't remember. It was around there.
It was before.
Okay, it was before. My thought on it was, they'll be like Yojimbo. They'll be Ronin, wanderings. They're Skywalkers. They're Jedi who are Ronin, who go from town to town or planet to planet. We have no temple. There is no sect. That we just go, and wherever the Force wills us, we're there to help. And then we move on to the next thing. We're the Skywalkers.
Like Qui-Gon, kind of.
Right.
Was in a weird way, sort of was more like than I live in a fancy space castle. Yeah. Yeah. And and that would allow them to tell stories where, I love him, but I'm a Padawan in the Jedi Order and love is forbidden. And then it will allow them to have, I'm a Jedi and this is my wife and these are my kids. And we're, you know what I mean? Like whatever they want to do, whatever the story, whatever is appropriate for the story that they want to tell is possible. Because it's like, I'm no expert on but if you look at like King Arthur or Arthurian legends and that kind of stuff, like imagine if those people couldn't have any families. Like,
Well, how would you? But we all know it was all about property rights transfer. So the Jedi
Right.
could own shit. They'd have families left and right.
Yeah.
It's not just instead of like, here's your father's lightsaber, here's your father's Star Destroyer. You know what I mean? And like, his Kaminoan clone plantation. Unfortunately, we don't talk about it. So, it was a bad time.
Yeah, right. No. It's like, I think it's time for Star Wars to not go back to a one Republic idea or a one Jedi idea, to go with like the Buck Rogers Flash Gordon thing, where out in here is this empire, and over here is this empire and this Republic, and these systems are aligned and that kind of stuff. Because then it's just like it doesn't close down and make it so like, it's like on one hand you want it to be simple to understand, but nobody wants to deal with like the politics of things. So if you do that, you just go, over here is the Ming Empire, and we're going to fight them now, and you don't have to spend all day dealing with that climate.
And not to use a cliched, analogy, but in the Marvel universe, there'll be a Doctor Doom and a Kang and a Magneto, and you know what I mean? And it's then the big event film in which one of those rises to the top, or a couple team up, or so it just depends on what their story goes. And they kind of have to do that, because I mean, they're doing it in animation. So there's multiple bad guys. Like, what I had to explain to my wife what an Inquisitor was. You know how that hard is, man? Like, this is an 80s kid who, she just watches Never-Ending Story and Labyrinth. She doesn't understand, well, there's these, they're not Dark Jedi. They're, you have to explain this stuff. But we've been getting it in the animation side since 2010 for 10 years. So that needs to make its way into live action, pretty frequently. So people don't just expect it.
I think Ahsoka is going to be kind of when we start to see that changeover, and maybe people taking in general the animation more seriously. Like, I think that might be when we see those things less divided. But my buddy Jason, who I do the UFO show with on Saturday, and if you ever want to join us, by the way, by all means.
Yeah, I didn't want to bug you on that first one, because it's just. But yeah, your guys had some great conversation. I got some stuff to add too. I just re-listened to Jeremy. I won't get into it, but Jeremy Corbell's first interview on Ryan Sprague's Somewhere in the Skies was right before the movie came out. So like that's an interesting conversation. Like, but right before the movie came out, it'd be fun to talk about. Yeah.
But he says loved and accept the sequel. Wait, hold on. He loves and accepts the sequel trilogy for what it is. I can say, however, I saw some amazing fan theories that honestly would have been way more unique and better received. And and that is, number one, I agree with you in a lot of ways. At the same time, I think that the sequel trilogy was always put into this like difficult place, because once they bought it, once that deal was signed and it was on, they wanted that movie by 2015, and then it even got pushed back at one point, and it was not going to be pushed back anymore. And when in reality, they needed to prep like 1.5 movies worth of work. They needed to do like all of the Force Awakens, and then what they were going to do after that. They just didn't have the time. Force Awakens was still being like finalized when The Last Jedi was being written. Like, that's how close these things were going down. So it was always going to kind of be a game of catch up. That said, while I think it becomes sort of a problem to some degree when a fan theory is out there, like they can't make a fan theory into a movie, because I think that it could lead to like legal problems and stuff. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure how that works. I don't know if a fan theory shuts down the likelihood of it happening or not. But I think didn't Guardians did something like that. Somebody like had a really good idea, and Guardians used it, I think.
Oh, it was Stan Lee as a watcher.
Oh, okay.
So the idea was that, hey, Stan, that's why Stan's in all the Marvel films, because he's really a watcher. And so they made him like, he's not a watcher, but he's like their guy.
Got it.
There's that scene in Guardians 2 where he shows up and the watchers are like, tell us about what you saw,
Yeah. So, Yeah, and then what does Mr. Hamilton say? He says, introduce an acolyte, bring him back as the Big Mag, move forward. Yeah, I think like you could do an interesting kind of take where if you did bring back Plagueis, if Plagueis is able to come back, or Plagueis is there, that he can't deal with, like, maybe Palpatine is too powerful. Maybe maybe he is his apprentice, but it's come to a point where, yeah, I'm supposed to die, but I got this trick for life after death. But it's so complicated because if they bring back Plagueis in the wrong way, then Palpatine should be able to come back too. So they have to make some really interesting rules and actually not just go, oh, he's back. Don't ask us why. Don't you dare ask us why. You ask us why, we're gonna turn off this episode right now if you ask us why.
You think they would do that? Like Lucasfilm would do a streaming event where someone asks them a question, they just kill the mic. We don't want to answer that.
You know what? You want to see Cassan? I'll turn Cassan off right now.
Kathleen goes, you want to talk some shit here? I don't have no power. Look, cancel. Boosh, you know what I mean? No one's getting paid.
Make Solo 2 happen? I can make Solo 1 erased. Whoa.
Yeah. Star Wars triggered, you know, like that. That's the new series. It's just where the suits strike back, you know, like. I had an idea I wrote down, because like, oh, well, these great ideas. I have a bad idea. It's a restaurant for the Galaxy's Edge called Snooky Cheese, where we could just put all the Snokes in there, you know, and they sing and dance. Palpatine gets lowered down on the crane.
It's like Five Nights at Freddy's for the Star Wars kids.
Yeah. I want an Exegol burger, you know. An Exegulp.
My son loves that Five Nights at Freddy's stuff, but it just made me think of him because every now and then, like with the last year, with not being able to go to Disneyland and stuff, and he's not vaccinated, so he'll just go up and I was like, man, I miss that macaroni and cheese at Galaxy's Edge. and you know, and if it's still there, if all of that's the same, it's the best trick because it turns out when you go to Galaxy's Edge, if you want to buy like kids like a meal, it's like it's closer to $10, like closer to there, right? But if you have picky ass kids like me, they only eat the macaroni and cheese, so you could just order the macaroni and cheese by itself. It's like $4.99. It's like at that point, it's just like going out to regular fast food at Disneyland. So when my kids were like, I want macaroni and cheese, I'm like, yeah, by all means, let's go put some macaroni and cheese in your face.
But when I was a kid, we go to Disney once a year. Yeah. My uncle would, and he'd take me with him. And all I looked forward to for 12 months was the churros and a Dole Whip. Right. Like, you know, and we could share a churro. I didn't need a whole one. Like, if I got a half one, I was good with it. But like, I definitely wanted my own Dole Whip, and he knew even then they were getting out cheap. You know, compared to everyone else. I mean, the Mickey hats alone were like $30 back in 87. You know, like
they are not cheap.
This mug was his mug. I couldn't even get it. He just gave it to me one day. He was like, I'm getting rid of my stuff. I'm like, I finally get the mug. You know, don't put this in the microwave. Like, do not do that.
Oh, yeah. It'll
it is made out of Beskar. Like, it will it will destroy your entire kitchen.
But yeah, so I think we are going to end this one here as it is almost 3:00, which is swimming time for my children. So, but thanks for joining me today, man. If you're anytime you're free to come back on. I think we'll have I haven't talked to him, but I think we'll have Ben on this week too. And if anybody else wants to come on, by all means, hit me up and come and hang out with us. It's great having you guys in the chat. I love having you guys in the chat. But if you guys ever want to come on, just let me know and we'll make it work. Especially with the community that we currently have, which is just so chill and nice. And on Saturday, I'm gonna do the show every day I can this week, and probably every day, just like I plan to. At the same time, on Saturday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, me and Rob are going to do the UFO show again, and we're going to have a guest on there, and he is going to bring his UFO photos that he captured himself, which I think could be fun. You know, and he's willing to come on, is willing to show his photos and talk about when he captured him. And so I'm like, that sounds cool. So
It's Kurt Russell.
wouldn't it be cool if it was Kurt Russell? Oh, I have a Kurt Russell story. I have a before we go, I have a quick Kurt Russell story. I don't know if I've ever talked about it before, but as a kid, my mom dated a one-legged man, as happens. No, but there's a side story to this. But this guy had one leg, and they hid it from me. They never told me. And how I discovered is a story for another day. But he was a contractor, and we were going. I think it was Arrowhead and Big Bear, and he was doing work up there. And he's like my mom's boyfriend. He's like, well, why don't you guys come with me, and we're gonna pick up my buddy, and his buddy was Kurt Russell's kid. Hung out with Kurt, was something to Kurt Russell's kid, and we show up to pick him up, and Kurt Russell is playing tennis with Goldie Hawn. And they're like said hi, and I'm just like, it's the Big Trouble in Little China guy. I hadn't put together who it was on the way up there, but yeah,
Jack Burton.
Nice. Yeah, it was nice, and there wasn't really much to it. It was just like kind of like a thing, and then I pulled a piece of a rock away, and a bat flew at my face. Weird day, but
if I saw them together, I would have been like, overboard. Let's go play some mini golf.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
right.
I wonder what's up with that kid from that movie who talked like Pee Wee Herman. You think he's still talking like Pee Wee Herman?
Oh, wow. What if that was a speech impediment and not him doing a shtick in this whole time? You know, like he's just like my whole life was over afterward. People wouldn't let me, you know, like, oh no. Him and Jake Lloyd started a band. And, you know. All right, man.
But yeah, thanks for everybody for showing up today. We will see you guys tomorrow. Think of your questions, your discussion questions, and if you want audio only versions, you can become a Patreon supporter. If you want to support the channel, you can become a channel supporter on the youtube.com. And we will see you guys all tomorrow. Have a good day. Be safe. And I'm going to play my favorite part as I do.
It's not about spaceships. It's not about spaceships.